is Alfred Goodrich. I'm the founder of Forte3D, the world's first 3D printed carbon fiber cello. And welcome to your new cello. We're gonna go through the steps here to show you how to set up and get your instrument sounding wonderful. The setup of the instrument is incredibly important. As much work as we put into building this for you, if you don't get the setup right, it'll never sound its best. So step by step, be patient with this. We'll walk you through it and we'll get you up and playing in no time. So start out by taking the body of the cello out of the box. This is relatively straightforward. So we'll put this to the side. And over here is the neck and scroll. And this is the world's first cello that can ship in 2 different boxes, which of course saves you on shipping expenses and allows us to get these instruments all over the world for much less money. Your scroll will look like this in our custom design packaging. And you're just going to first remove the bridge, which is tucked here nicely at the top of the scroll, and put that to the side. And then you're going to lift the neck and scroll out of the box by the little hand holders there. You can then put the scroll box to the side. Next, you're going to bend the flaps down at the end and reach around the back and peel up these edges, which will release the plastic sheeting covering the neck and scroll on both sides. Once that's done, you can completely remove the covers. And now you have access to the neck and scroll of the cello. This is your tailpiece. Here is your accoutrement bag with an Allen key and your all-important A-string height template. So we can put all this to the side. Now you'll notice here that your strings are taped to the fingerboard. This is how we set it up for you. They're in the correct order on your neck and scroll, A, D, G, and C. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to attach the neck and scroll to the body of the instrument. And this is done very simply by finding the small hole here where you insert the Allen key. Now you want to be very careful when you're doing this as to make sure the Allen key is seated properly into the screw here. And it's a very tightly machined fit, so you want to just be absolutely sure that it's all the way sunk in because you don't want to strip the screw here. If you strip the screw, you can actually really damage your instrument. But it's very robust as long as you put it in all the way. So you grab your neck and scroll. We leave the strings kind of taped for now. And there's the other end of the screw on the top lock. It goes right in like this. Once it's at the tip of the threads, you simply screw your neck and scroll on. We absolutely do not recommend using a drill or any other kind of accoutrement to do this. We want to do it by hand, just so you have full control over the process. And this is going to be the same steps you do to ultimately adjust your string height. Now, we're going to take the neck and scroll all the way back until the back of the scroll is hidden by a hood in the top lock here. And of course, these steps are going to be reversed when you're packing your cello up for shipment, or if you're getting on a plane. Now, as a rough stopping point, you want to have your fingerboard roughly the distance of your pinky from the top of the cello. So we got a little bit more to go there. And that feels a bit right. So you'll notice that the neck and scroll do not fit perfectly onto the top unless you pull them down a little bit. That is absolutely by design, so the whole mechanism is trapped in there and doesn't buzz. So you might notice this is a little bit free and loose. You'll also notice that you have the ability to move your neck and scroll to the side just a little bit. And that's going to come in handy later for adjusting the exact position of your fingerboard. So once you are at this point, you can grab your tailpiece. And you want to be very careful here that the tailpiece does not scratch the top of your beautiful new cello. So we take your little velvet accoutrement bag and wrap the tail gut around your end pin. And that just circles around there. And there's a little groove that it fits in. And then make sure that the tailgate is right in the center of the bottom nut here. You don't want this off to the side here or off to the side there. It actually hurts the sound of your cello a little bit. So once this is in the right position, you lay that on to your velvet bag. Now it's time to start stringing up your cello. So you can break the tape here and slowly unwind your strings. You might want to leave the tape on the top just so the strings don't come undone from the tuning pegs. Now, you're going to start with your C string, which as you're looking at the cello is the one all the way on the left, the thickest one, and that goes right into the little clip here on the tailpiece of your fine tuner. And then that gets put to the left-hand side of the fingerboard. Next, you do that with your G string and tuck that in. Next, your D string, that goes on the other side, so to your right of the fingerboard. And you might notice that one of your strings has a wolf stopper on it. That is by design and is actually set to the proper place from the factory. So you want to not move that yet until you have played it, and if you're an experienced cellist and are familiar with it, you can move it and do all that stuff. But for now, I would leave it where it is. Lastly, your A string, which goes right here. Some of them might need to be loosened slightly just to make the connection. Great. So we have our cello almost entirely strung up. Now, next you're going to grab your bridge, and you want to make sure that the Forte3D logo is facing the top of the cello. That is because this is the A string side. It has a little leather on it, so you know. This is the C string side. It's very important to make sure that you have the correct part of the bridge, string of the bridge, meeting the correct string on the cello. So Forte logo facing up, and you're just going to place the bridge underneath the strings, lifting them all up individually. And again, you might need to give yourself a little slack with these strings here. Hopefully they won't be too tangled for you. Now the best way I've found to do this is to start in the back here and slowly raise the bridge underneath the strings. Now you need to make sure that they're not coming underneath the fingerboard here. And once they're lined up, A, D, G, C, you can raise your bridge. All right, so with relatively little fuss, our bridge is roughly in the right place. You can now remove your accoutrement bag. You want to double check here that your tailpiece has not moved from the center of the bottom nut. And now we're getting into the finer points of setting up your cello. At this point, you can remove the tape holding your strings down at the top nut here. And you just want to make sure that the strings are going through the top nut in their correct grooves, A, D, G, C. You can see that right here. Now, before you apply any tension to your cello, you're going to grab your A string height and bridge template. And you'll notice that this has an A on one side and a C on the other side. So you can start out, and this is to help your bridge get located north, south, and east and west on the cello. So there's a very small notch on the back of the template here. That lines up with the notches in the F hole on the inside. So we'll start with the C string, and we'll put this here. And you'll notice the bottom of the template will go underneath the bridge, on the south side of the bridge. So that goes here, and the notch will line up with the notch on the F hole. And I just kind of eyeballed that, but it's actually very, very close to correct. So if it was really far away that way, you would move it back. If it was too far north, you would move it south again. And then once that's there, you're going to flip the template over so you see the A, and then do the same operation on the A string side. And this is really just to get a rough placement of the bridge. There we go. North, south, east, and west. And now, on your cello, the bridge width may vary very slightly. You just want to make sure that you have the same distance on either side. You really want the bridge to be centered between the two F holes. We'll get an A here. So next, you're going to start tuning up your cello. You want to see if there's any strings that are tight and just get basically to the point where they make some kind of a tone. And the whole thing is going to move around until the cello is actually at pitch. So what I like to do is tune it in increments. You don't want to tune a single string all the way up at once. You want to actually get your A string higher. About there, and then tune in fifths below that. So and then the next string. And then you're going to repeat that process. Get another A. Okay, so now you're at pitch and you want to do another setup of your bridge. You'll notice that it has shifted slightly from the tuning process, and that is to be expected. So you grab your indicator here, put it on the C string side, and then you're just going to move the bridge until it's the correct distance. It'll be obviously a little harder to move now with tension on the cello. So the notches line up. And you can just do this by hand. It's relatively easy to do until you have the same exact distance on either side of the A and C string. So the bridge is in the center. Now, the notches of the F holes, if you want to do a finer adjustment here, should point to the center of the bridge foot. So when you look down the edge of the cello, you're going to see the notches point right to the center of the bridge foot. And this is a little different from traditional cellos where the outside notch is in a different place than the inside notch. Our notches are aligned, so you can line up the outside notch, the inside notch, right with the center of the bridge foot. So that is looking great. Lastly, you want to make sure that your bridge is completely flat on the back end here. So this here is a 90-degree angle. When you look down it, this will look flat, and this will kind of curve forward a little bit. So you want to be able to just make sure that when you look right down from the top of the bridge, it's completely flat along the back. And you just double check everything. And looking good. Check your tuning. Okay, now you're almost there. The last part is to do the fine adjustments on the neck and scroll. You want to check with your A string height indicator. This little sliver towards the end should be the height of your A string over the fingerboard. So you put it underneath the A string, and it should just barely touch the A string. Now, this is where we recommend you put it. Of course, if you're an experienced player, you will want maybe a little higher string height. If you're just learning, you can bring it closer to the strings closer to the fingerboard. That's one of the advantages of the cello. If you're a beginning cellist, I would just make sure you check this with your teacher to make sure that you're not setting yourself back by having the strings too close or just a little weird, etc. So this is right now a little high. Okay, so it's not quite touching. They could be too close. It could be either way when you're first setting it up. Every cello is a little different. So, very important, you don't want to change the height of your fingerboard without loosening the tension of the strings. It's a very robust mechanism, but this is just to ensure that you're not kind of grinding everything together. So, what I like to do is go 1, 2, 3, 4 turns, 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. And this really takes almost all the tension off of the strings. Now, we needed to raise the fingerboard up slightly, so that is going to be moving the screw counterclockwise. So to move the fingerboard up or make the strings lower counterclockwise, to raise the strings up or move the fingerboard back clockwise. So here's a counterclockwise turn, which is probably all you need. And please keep in mind to loosen the strings first before you do any adjustments. And then you can tighten back up. 1, I only do 3 going back up just for safety. 1, 2, 3, and great. And now we'll check to see how close we are. And that's perfect. So, your very last step, and this is something that we have built into the design of the cello to accommodate different string tensions. You'll find that if you're using a soloist forte A string, it has a lot more tension on it than a dolce soft A string. And what that can do, and this is to all cellos, it can kind of put the whole cello out of whack because one side of the instrument's under more tension than the other side. So we've built in a way to accommodate that so your bridge is always in the optimal spot on your instrument. The last thing is you'll notice here that the fingerboard is a little to the east, and that is easily remedied by, again, loosening the strings down. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can just very lightly move the fingerboard over to where it's in the right position for you. And there's a good amount of adjustment here by design so you can fit it so you can have the fingerboard exactly where you want it. Now keep in mind, this is after the bridge is in the correct position and you're doing it with less tension on the strings. And we'll tune it up again. And now we have the cello almost in perfect position. That's correct there for the A string. We double check here. That's correct. That's correct. Maybe a little farther south. Double check, 90 degrees here. We could go back a smidge. The tail gut is exactly centered on the bottom block. And the fingerboard is centered underneath the strings. And you're done. Your cello is ready to play. You've done it. And you just want to be patient with your setup because this is how to get the most from your instrument overall. And it makes a big difference in the sound that you're going to get from it. So be patient with it. Always remember if you're going to do any moves with the neck and scroll at all, you lower the tension of the strings at least 4 turns on each of the tuners, and you should be ready to go. Some points to kind of bring to your attention. Before the cello is under tension, the top of the cello is roughly flat or even a little bit raised up. When the strings are under tension, it by design pushes down on the top and you end up with a concave top, which is more like a speaker than a traditional cello top. So this might be terrifying to luthiers or people that are used to seeing an arch top of a cello, but it is very, very much by design. And you're going to see that roughly there's an equal amount of collapsing of the top on either side of the F holes here. So that should be roughly the same. And then another thing you'll notice is on the back here, there's a bulge from the sound post. And that is also very, very much by design. Without the sound post putting pressure on the back would actually not be under enough tension and not be rigid enough to properly speak. And therefore, this is incredibly important. And I know this is also possibly terrifying to luthiers because if you see a sound post protruding out of the back of a cello, it's usually because it was in a horrible accident. But in this instance, this is very, very much by design. It is impossible for this to go through the back. I've actually stood on these cellos and could not get it to rip through the back. It's incredibly strong. But it gives it this tension which otherwise would not be there. So they're set properly at the factory. Trust us on it. If you're a luthier and you want to talk about doing some special stuff to your cello, let me know. But again, some of this stuff is very scary, but it's actually exactly the way it's supposed to be. So no alarms there, and you're ready to go. A little out of tune. And your cello is set up.